came out with one of their first modules because I was so captivated by the capabilities that they provide in their modules and how well they do them. Well, over the years, they have become just super. And Studio 2, as you'll see in the presentation this afternoon, is almost equivalent to Photoshop in many ways. It has layers, has even more things related to presets that you can use to do creative enhancements. There's a module called Gigapixel, which will take a small file and enlarge it to a quality larger image. It's amazing. One that's denoise, and the denoise capability is really super. Sharpen is another one. And Studio 2 allows each of those other modules to be plug-in. So it's really amazing what you can do with just Studio 2. And rather than try to put it all together, I saw a presentation recently. In fact, Lynn put me onto it. And that's what I will play this afternoon. And he goes through the various modules. He goes through them in a very good way in the sense of showing you where each piece that he needs to click on, or each feature that he clicks on to show you how to use it. But there are a lot of videos available from topazlabs.com. Topazlabs.com is the company, and they have many videos. That's also where you would download the modules. And there are a lot on YouTube related to Topaz modules. Also, and you saw in my mailing, that if you wanted to buy any of them, they run specials from time to time, but also, even if they have a special, if you put in the promo code, my last name with 15 attached to it, capital M-A-R-I-A-N-A 15 in the promo code, you get additional 15% off. So I will share my screen now and start the video that I want you to see this afternoon. Hold on 1 minute. You can all see my screen. It says, how did it?
Yes.
How I did it? Topaz Labs? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
And as we go through this, or as it plays, there will be times where it comes by for an advertisement. I'll click on that, skip through from that, and get back to the presentation. So just stay with me.
Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate the support and seeing so many friendly faces that I've traveled with, or that I've been to workshops with, or just know from some aspect of photography. What I'm going to be covering today is creating with Topaz Studio 2, which is one of my favorite tools for working on the desktop for processing images. And I want to be clear about what I'm using and what I'm going to be doing. So Studio 2 is the editor that's part of the Topaz suite, and it does plug into Photoshop and Lightroom, but I'm going to be using it today as a standalone app. I don't plug it in necessarily very often to Lightroom or Photoshop, although you can, and it works great. But I have so many different ways that people use this. The best way for me to kind of show a generic way of doing it is to just do it as a standalone. The other thing that I'm going to be doing that you may or may not have been doing in the past is I'm going to be using Studio 2, and then I'm going to invoke other Studio or apps, other Topaz apps like Denoise AI and Sharpen AI and Mask AI I'm going to invoke those as plugins to Topaz Studio, which makes it just so convenient to, you can start your processing, go out and grab your tools that you want to apply, integrate those. It round trips you right back into Studio 2, and you can continue with your processing. So I will be doing that. Sorry, I just got distracted by a question that popped up. So I'll be talking also today about, in addition to Topaz Studio and AI and Sharpen AI and Mask AI, I want to start out, in fact, I'm going to start the presentation with Gigapixel. But before that, let me just go through some slides here really quickly and just show you some of the things that I've done with Topaz Studio recently. But the easiest way for me, I simply open a folder of the files I'm going to work on.
With MailChimp's customer journey smarts, you can track when a customer buys something.
And then I drag and drop those right into the working space. So I'm going to grab this image and drop it right on the screen, and you can see it fills right away. This is an image. It's an iPhone image. It's a very small file. It's only about well, if we look down here, you can see the dimensions of it. So it's roughly a 6 megapixel file, not very big. So you can't really print this very large. You don't have the integrity to blow it up. One of the things that I use Gigapixel for, I have an online store. Maybe many of you have places where you sell or you want to print your work large. A lot of smaller images like iPhone images, or an image that maybe you've cropped really tightly and you've lost a lot of the resolution in that crop, you can't print them very large. What I do when I post an image to my Fine Art America site, I frequently take them into Gigapixel before I post them on the site, and they can then be printed at the largest size as possible there. This image right here, you can tell down here, it's about a 6 megapixel image. I'm going to enlarge it by 2 times. If you look over on the right, you can choose anywhere from 2x up to a custom size. So you can enlarge things quite large, which works if you're starting with a large image already. So what I want to do, a couple of things here. You've got your adjuster here for the different sizes. I'm going to leave this at 100% so we can see what's going on. You have a couple different views. You can do a single view or a side-by-side view. And I want us to see side-by-side for comparison. And then I have the preview enabled. So this is the original image on the left, and the preview is going to appear over here when I update this and run the program. You've got several different modes that you can use here. You've got a scale, or I'm sorry, I got off on the wrong place here. You can choose to size your image by scale, or you can add width and height. I usually use the scale and upsize them 2 to 4 to 6 times, depending on the image. You have several different modes that you can choose from. And if you ever forget what they are, you can always click on this little, or just mouse over this question mark. And the standard mode for most images, it's what I use most of the time. The architectural mode is great for cityscapes or things where you want a really crisp edge on buildings and so on. Compressed can be very good if you have a really small file, or maybe you've got images from an old camera, 10 years or 15 years ago, or maybe you have old family photos that you're trying to recover. The compressed mode does a great job with that. The art mode I haven't used much. It's for animated things and that sort of thing. I have not used that, so I can't really speak to it. Excuse me. I'm going to leave this in standard mode. Now you'll notice right here, it's going to both work on noise and the blur in the image. And there's an auto button here. If I click on that, it's going to tell me what the computer thinks it should do with this image. So it would set the noise suppression at 20 and the blur at about 80. You don't have to accept those. You can override them. But I found that this application is pretty smart. It's been trained on lots of images, and it does a really good job. I usually leave the reduced color bleed on. Face refinement, though, I don't always turn it on unless I have a face, and it really does make a difference. And just to show you that, I'm going to run this first without face refinement on. And once you have everything set up, well, one other thing, you'll notice up here, auto update preview. I have that turned off. The reason I have it turned off is because if you have it on auto update, every time you make a single change to any one of these things, it's going to run the program. I don't want to do that until I've got everything set, and then I want to control when it runs. So I turn that off. I find it annoying to have it on. So I'm going to go ahead and tap update on this, and let's watch what happens. And the speed of this is going to vary depending on your individual computer and what kind of processing chips you have and so on. So there's our result. And if you look carefully at the image, it's very subtle, but you'll notice her face has been smoothed a little bit. Her eyes have more clarity. There's a little bit more detail in her lips. It's very subtle, but here's the thing. This is a 6 megapixel image. This is a 30-something megapixel image. So even though they are appearing here in the same size, by the time you can blow this one up considerably larger with integrity, and it will actually look better than this one would at its maximum size of maybe 8 by 10 or maybe 16 by 20. But here I want to show you now, I'm going to switch this to face refinement, and I'm going to run it again. And it takes a second, but it goes pretty quickly once you've done the first one. And I don't know if I said I'm using a MacBook, or an iMac for running this, but I also run these on my MacBook Pro, and it works great. So there it is with the face enhancer refinement turned on. And look at her lips compared to here, the hair on her neck over here. There's so much more detail there, and then her eyes are sharper and both. And again, remember, the difference isn't great in comparing the preview to the result or to the original. But when you look at the size difference, that's what can be amazing. If you start with a really, really small image, like maybe a 100 kilobyte image that you downloaded off of the internet or something, you will see a huge difference between the original and the upgraded image. Does it work on everything? Nope. Sometimes it just doesn't give a good result. But I'd say 90% of the time, I'm very happy with what happens with this. Once you're ready to save, you would click on Save Image. And when you do, you can choose to save it in any of these formats. I typically choose JPEG or TIFF at this point. You can rename the file here. I like to leave the scaling mode named so I know if I used which of the scaling modes I used to do this. It's just in the file name. And then you can either have it go back to the source directory where it came from, or you can save it to another location. You can choose a different color profile if you wish, or leave it as the one that it came in at. And that's it. I'm not going to go ahead and save this because it does take a minute to do that, and there's no point in spending our time watching that save. But that's AI Gigapixel, and I find it really useful. Like I said, I use it for my images that I post on Fine Art America for selling. And I'm just going to look quickly here. Let's see if there's any specific questions about Gigapixel. I don't see anything right now, so I'm gonna move on. So I'm gonna go ahead and close up Gigapixel, and it's asking me if I want to save, and I'm gonna say no. Go ahead and close it without saving, and I am going to launch Topaz Studio 2.
This is my video. It's pretty good, right? Well, it's a little boring. Can't you do?
And while it's launching here, I'm going to grab my image. Let's see. So this is a photograph. Well, one other thing. I'm using raw files. I'm dropping raw files right into the interface here. You can use JPEGs as well, But just like any JPEG versus RAW, you're going to have a lot more data in that RAW file. And the reason I like to use the RAW files when I'm presenting is because I really want you to see how much you can get out of these files. And you just can't see that with a JPEG. This is a photograph of a pelican that I photographed in Louisiana a couple years ago, and I'm not a bird photographer. I just want to be really clear about that. And I was so excited to get the chance to make this image, and then I got home and looked at him on the screen, and I zoomed in on him, and I was like, oh man, it's soft. I was panning it. It's not good. So I was really disappointed, and I didn't look at it for a couple of years. And then when denoise came out and Sharpen AI, I thought, I'm going to try this and see what it does to this image. So here's my process. We're in Studio 2 right now, and I'm just going to walk around quickly around the interface. I know many of you are familiar with it, but some of you may be new to the Studio 2 interface. You saw how I opened a new file. I simply drag and drop it, but you can also click the open box here, or you can click File Open up here and open an image. You can export from here, or I usually go to the File menu, and you can save in two ways. One is an export, which just saves the image without any adjustments that you can go back and tweak. The other saves the project with all the layers in it that you can go back and open again and continue editing. Across here, you have different views that you can, just like many apps, you can choose a split view and so on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with that. You can view the original. You don't have to click the button up here. You can simply press the mouse on the image. We haven't changed anything yet, so it's not showing us, but you can see here it shows the original when I depress my mouse, and you can see that way. You can zoom by scrolling with your mouse, just zooming in and out. If you get really big and you want to go back, you can hit the fit button and it takes you down to fit on the screen. You can choose 100%. You can increase the size of this all the way up to 1,000%. So you can get really tight on your image and see what's going on. Over here, you have your standard undo and redo button. You have a crop tool that allows you to select that, and you can crop using different, I think it actually automatically leveled my image there, even though I didn't intend it to. You can choose different aspect ratios for your crop and so on. I'm going to cancel that. And you have a healing tool, which if you have healing to do, I suggest you do it in the very beginning because somehow there's a problem with this. It's not functioning correctly. I notice I've got a little spot here that I'm going to try and take out. It's very faint, but I know it's there because I could see it when I started processing. And I'm just going to see if I can take that out. And I'll apply that. And so it's pretty straightforward. The problem with it is once you've started editing and you have some layers, you can't go back and do any healing. It's a problem they're working on fixing. Over here we have a navigator. So if you're way zoomed in on something, you can use the navigator to find your way around, not unlike many other apps. And then over here we have a histogram. This is not functioning at the moment. They are working on fixing it. If you like to have a histogram in your product when you're doing raw processing, I encourage you to send a note to Topaz and say, hey guys, we need that histogram. I've been on them for a while and it's still not there. So all the fun really happens right over here between these two buttons. You've got add a filter, and right now, we're looking at my favorite filters. So I have a truncated list of everything that appears here. If I click on the filters button here, you're seeing everything that comes with the software. So the blue hearts are things that I've selected to mark as my favorites. Everything that you see here in this box, and this box all come with Studio 2. These items down here are purchased separately. This is AI Adjust, Denoise AI, Sharpen AI, Mask AI, and you'll notice they're in the plugins section. When you install those on your computer, Studio 2 recognizes them and adds them to the interface. You don't have to do anything to add them in. It knows they're there, they're new, and it finds them, and it takes care of that for you. But those are not part of the standard package of Topaz Studio 2. I'm going to switch here back to my favorites, which I've selected. These are the things I use most often. And then if I wanted, I could click on recent, and it shows me the apps or the tools that I've used in the last day or so. So in preparing for today, these are some of the things that I used. I'm going to go back to my favorites. The other thing that you have up here are what they call looks. Many other programs call them presets. There are different categories here, all these different categories. I've got it set to all. There are different groupings by abstract or impression or texture or whatever. These are all collections of adjustments that have been pre-made and exist in Studio 2 and that you can select. When you select one of these, it will actually add, let's just pick one, I'll add this pencil one. And if I were to apply this, it adds that colored pencil look, and it's actually only made up of one adjustment, which is impression. I can go in now if I want and tweak that as much as I like. I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I really don't want to use that right now, but I wanted you to see you can choose any of the looks that you see, and you can then adjust those to your heart's content to make them your own. So that they're not right out of the box things that get applied to your images. The other thing you can do, if you, let's say you work on an image for a long time and you've done a lot of different work on it, and you maybe want to apply that to other images, you can save your own looks. So if I go in here, I've got a section here called My Looks, and I can look at all of my looks, or I could look at my looks that I've created by impression or by texture, and so on. So there are ways to filter down to see what you want. But my point is you can save your own looks, and once you've created a series of edits to an image. So that's essentially that. I'm going to go ahead and close that up. And I want to start now with my process. So what I'm about to do, I'm going to launch Denoise AI and run Denoise AI in this, and then I'm going to run Sharpen AI. So I know a lot of you who are experienced photographers are doing just what I did when I learned this process and saying, wait a minute, why would I sharpen before I've edited my image? Well, I've talked with the people at Topaz about this, and they actually, and I bear this out with my own testing, I do a denoise at the very beginning of my process and Sharpen AI at the very beginning, and then I do the rest of my workflow. And the results have been phenomenal. So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to open the filter, and I'm going to go down, and I'm going to launch Denoise AI.
Welcome to the Disney Bundle, where Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus come to life on all your screens.
And it takes a second to launch it. It's invoking it. And so now, wow, that's really tiny. Come on. Well, that's bizarre. There we go. It was stuck in a small mode. Anyway, so zoomed way out. Sorry, folks, something's wacky going on here. And I don't know what it is. All right, well, it doesn't look right, and it's not letting me zoom, so I don't know what's going on. I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to launch it one more time just to make sure it just didn't have a hiccup. I've been doing this all day long and haven't had any issues, so I don't know what's happening now. See if this is better. There we go. That's better. That's what it's supposed to do. Okay, so I'm going to leave this right where it is. And what I want to do, Denoise AI is going to do two things. It's going to reduce noise in the image, and it's also going to enhance the sharpness. It does both of those things, even though it's called Denoise AI. And what I'm going to do, if you haven't used this tool in a while, one of the new features they've added is something called masking. And if I click on the masking feature here, it allows me to mask this bird if I want. And so that means you can mask it, and then the effect that you apply is only going to affect the bird. They have in Sharpen AI, they have another feature that actually recognizes the bird and sharpens it for you. And I'm going to wait until I get to Sharpen AI to show you that. So I'm not going to do any masking here. I'm going to just remove that. But I wanted you to know that it is also in denoise AI, but they haven't set up the masking button to recognize the subject yet. My guess is that will be in an update soon to come. So as we look around here, the masking button we looked at, we can zoom in and out here down to fit on the screen, or all the way up to 400%. We are right now at 100% on this image. You can see how blurry the eye is. That's kind of a good place to be looking here as we look at this image. And one of the things I wanted to show you that's also a relatively new feature, you have several different modes that you can use for denoise. You can use the one they call denoise AI. You can use clear AI, which is the one that actually comes within Studio 2. So if you don't purchase the denoise AI, you can use AI Clear from within Studio 2, and it does a remarkable job. Then there's also a low light mode. So if you have an image that was taken in low light, possibly with a really high ISO, that low light mode can do a really nice job. So one of the things you can do now, if you go up to view, you can choose comparison mode, and it gives you 4 panels, and you can see here's the original over here. Here's denoise AI, here's AI Clear, and here's low light. And it's showing you that none of those are updated yet. All you have to do, though, to update them, I'm going to start with denoise. I'm going to select that mode. I'm going to choose the auto button, and this is going to tell me what the computer recommends for this image. Notice the noise removal is very low, so I might override that. But I'm going to go ahead and process that, and it's going to work on just that. So there's that just one image right there. Then I'm going to go to AI Clear, and I'm going to update AI Clear down here in the lower left. Then I'm going to go to low light, and I'm going to update that. So now I can compare the different modes. Now, this particular image doesn't show a whole lot of variability from one to the other, but some images do. So I wanted you to know that you have this option to compare these modes and help you make a decision about which mode might be best for your image. The one that I find to be the most powerful and consistently the best is denoise AI. I'm going to switch back to the split view, and I'm going to choose denoise AI. And I've chosen auto here, but I can tell there's noise in there, and I can see that it's not taking much out. I'm going to override that and choose a little bit more noise reduction. And I'm going to go ahead and click the update button. Again, auto preview, I leave off because it, just like in Gigapixel, if you have that update preview on, every time you make a change here, it's going to run the program, and it just is annoying. Okay, so update, and it moves pretty quickly through this. Again, that's going to depend on your machine. And so there's our before and after. Not a lot of change here in this, but a little bit, and it's enough that I'm going to keep it. But this is just one part of this process, right? This is denoise. I'm going to go ahead and accept that, and so to do that, I have to apply it, and now it's going to apply those changes and round trip me back into Studio 2, and it takes a second. So that, again, this is kind of a 1-2 punch. You start with denoise AI, and then you do sharpen it. And I wish I could hear the audio on this, because I know there will be some oohs and ahs when you see the result of this. It's quite dramatic. Okay, so we've round tripped it back into Studio 2. There's before and there's after. Not a whole lot of difference yet, but a little bit. Now I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to choose Sharpen AI. And again, it's going to evoke the plugin. And I'm just going to pull it down a little bit. And I want to show you this. This is really amazing, I think. I'm going to click on the masking button right here. And when I do, I come down here and look at this. It recognizes a bird, and it's wanting me to confirm that indeed that's a bird. So I'm going to click yes, and it masks it for me. Now, if I want, if there's an area that I need, like maybe this area right here that they didn't get this little piece, I can come in here, I can choose edge aware. Edge aware puts that circle around the brush so that I can get close to that area. And so now I can, I masked in right up to the edge. I could do it up here too. So you can touch up the things that the mask might not have gotten. And then once you have it the way you want it, you're going to go over here and apply the mask.
With MailChimp's customer journey smarts, you can track when a customer buys something.
What's this?
And now I'm going to go and run the program. So I'm going to choose auto, and it's telling me there are 3 modes. There's a sharpen mode, a stabilize mode, and a focus mode. And you can always go to the little question mark here, and it kind of explains those. Auto is going to suggest mode based on what it knows. And then settings, I'm also going to click auto here. And you can always override these, but my experience is that it is really smart. It does better than I do at figuring this out. Some images, you might want to add a little grain for some tooth in the image. I'm not going to do that with this. I got plenty of that going on already. So I'm going to go ahead now and tap update. And it's going to do its thing. And sharpening AI can take a little bit longer than other things. And again, you can do this on a JPEG file, but you're going to get better results if you are shooting with RAW and use the RAW version of your file. I mean, usually I shoot JPEG and RAW at the same time. So I have them both, but I do prefer processing with the RAW file just for that extra data that I can get. Almost there. Okay. So now look at this. There's before and there's after. I mean, it's still not 100%, but it's pretty darn good. It's really taken us into a place where now this image that I was ready to throw away is really kind of getting to where I think I'm going to like it. I'm going to just bump the noise suppression up just a little bit and update that one more time. And the second update usually goes much quicker than the first. And sometimes I'll tweak these a little bit and just see what I'm liking about it. But the fact that you can, mask it with a push of a button and get these kind of results is just phenomenal to me. And there we go. So there it is. There's our before. Look at his eye. And there's after. That's pretty amazing. I'm going to go ahead now and apply that. So it's going to apply that now to the image and round trip us back into Studio 2. It'll take a minute. I apologize for the waiting here. The only other way to do this would be to record it ahead of time and speed up the waiting and the masking, which maybe I'll do. But it's far more impressive to see the raw files processed than just the JPEGs. They really do make a difference in the outcome of the image. One of the things too, if you have any doubts about whether your computer will handle the Topaz products, if it has the power, the first thing to do is go out and look at the specifications page on their website. But if you still have doubts about it, they offer everything they have out there for 30 days for free, and they don't take your credit card number until the end of that 30 days, and only if you decide to make a purchase. So you can, for 30 days, you can try any of this stuff out, and if it flies, then you can purchase it, and if you have issues, you can consider whether you need to update. Like I said, I'm running most of this both on my iMac, which is a little more powerful than my MacBook Pro, but my MacBook Pro is several years old, and it still manages most of this stuff just fine because I take it on the road and do presentations with it that way, and it does just fine. Okay, as you can see, the sharpen can take a little bit of time. We're almost there. While we're waiting here, I see a question about Fuji RAW files. Stephen, you're asking about the demosaic of Fuji RAW files, and I'm not aware of anything in Studio that would help address that. All right, so here's our image. There's where we started with it. There's where we are now. Now I'm just going to take it through the rest of my my process. What I like about this is that we did our sharpening and stuff on this part of the image, but I didn't have to sharpen the water. What I'm going to do now is go into, remember, this is a raw file, so I'm going to start my process with the basic adjustment. And this is where I wish the histogram was here because I would certainly be using it. What I'm going to do now is begin to adjust my exposure, clarity. I'm going to lift my shadows a little bit in the bird, maybe even lift the black. That's too much. Black point a little, and then I might drop my white point down, and I might saturate just a little bit. So something like that for my the adjustment to the raw file. The next thing I'm going to do here is go to precision detail, and this is it used to be called clarity in the earlier versions of this, but it's gotten so much more sophisticated. You can now adjust the global image overall. You can adjust just the detail in shadows and just the detail in highlights. You can go down a rabbit hole doing this. It's quite powerful, but it's also challenging, especially in the beginning, I find. What I like to do is go to presets down here. And in this one, they have 5 different presets that are already established. What I'm interested in right now is the shadow detail in the bird. I'm not interested in highlight detail out here, but I'm interested in the shadow detail. So I'm going to zoom in on this so we can see it, and I'm going to click shadow detail. Look at the difference. I mean, well, here, to see the difference, I'm going to apply that. You have to hit the apply button. And then I'm going to turn it off with the little eyeball here. There's without that precision contrast. And there's with it. That's a pretty amazing difference. The next thing I'm going to do here is go down to precision detail. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant precision contrast. So there's a trash can right here. I'm going to throw that accidental layer away. I'm going to go to precision contrast. And again, I can work the sliders manually on all of these different types of contrast from micro all the way up to high. But what I'm going to do is go down to my presets, and there are a lot more here for the contrast mode. But I'm going to let's look at color detail and see what it does. It's a little much. And even like here's high dynamic range. A lot of times I find myself going through these and looking at them. The thing about this is, let's go back to the, let's go to details. That's a little more subdued, but here's the thing. If it's too much, you can always come in here and drop the opacity with the slider. So it mitigates the harshness of the effect by playing with it. The other thing you can do, once you apply it, I'll go ahead and apply it, you can always come back and play with the sliders here to fine tune what you're seeing in the image. So you might increase the macro a little bit. You might drop the low down and just watch the way the image is changing. The other thing that I want to start talking about now is masking within these adjustments. So I'm really interested in controlling what happens to the bird here, but I don't want to have the effect on the rest of the image. So what I'm going to do in precision, I'm going to go back to precision detail for a minute. So if we look at this, if I turn off contrast and I turn off detail, there's our image without it. And if I turn it back on, look what it's done to the water. It's kind of brought the water up in a way that I really don't want to. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mask. I'm going to use the mask tool right here. It looks like this washing machine icon. Tap on it. I'm going to come down here to the interface, the masking interface, and I'm going to invert the mask. When I invert it, what I'm seeing now is the image without this detail effect applied. And what I'm going to do is choose my brush, increase the transparency to 100%. I'm going to make my brush a little larger here. I'm going to make sure I have edge aware on, and I can choose, I can see how I can slide back and forth and change how soft or harsh that red edge is going to be, somewhere in there probably. And now I can go in here and I can mask this bird pretty precisely in just a second. And I'm not going to do it, but I could make my brush smaller and do the wingtips and the feet and the whole bit. For us today, I'm going to try and go as quickly as I can here and not go into all that detail, but that's part of what you can do with this. You know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to go ahead because I want to use this mask for other things. So I am going to drop my radius. I'm going to zoom in here. I am going to make my brush smaller, and I'm going to get these wingtips as well as everything else. And let's take a second. The reason I'm doing this, one of the cool things you can do with this tool is you can copy the mask and paste it into another tool. So I'm just going to go down here. I'm kind of being sloppy about it. You can be far more precise than I'm being. But there is our image now. And you can see the mask right here. And what I'm going to do, if I scroll down on that a little bit, if I go back into precision detail, let's say if I make a crazy adjustment here and I drop all my detail down, it's only dropping it in the bird. It's not dropping it in the rest of the image. So the part that you're affecting is what you've masked. So I'm going to leave that about right there. Now what I want to do is I want to do that same masking on precision contrast. So I'm going to go here into my precision detail mask. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to precision contrast up here. I have to turn it on first. I had it off. I'm going to choose the mask tool. And then I'm going to go here and paste that mask. And now I've got the same thing going on here where I'm only affecting with detail and contrast the bird and not the background. The next thing that I'm going to do here is HSL color tuning. Now, there's not a lot of evident color in this bird, but there is some around the eye and some things like that. And as I mouse over color tuning here, you can see as I'm over the orange, it shows me where that is playing in the bird. The bird is actually quite colorful, but you don't really see it. What I'm going to do is go to this gold, and I want to see if I can make that eye a little bit more, get the color a little bit more. So I'm increasing the saturation, and then I can increase the brightness a little bit. And look how, now I've brightened the whole image, but look at the eye. I'm going to make this overdone so you can see it more. What I'm going to do now is do a mask of just that color. I'm going to invert the mask. So none of that color is showing here now. Then I'm going to grab my brush, increase the transparency, and drop the radius down so it's really small, and I can get that eye. And I'm just going to go in here and tap that a little bit. And now I've added that kind of golden color to the eye. And if I want, I can go back into my HSL color tuning, click on that, and I can accentuate that as much as I want. I can make it brighter. But it's a way of popping that eye that is there, but we couldn't see it before. So the next thing that I might do with an image, and I often do this, is to use a vignette. And the vignette tool here is really cool. And one of the ways that I mean, a vignette is just a way of directing your viewer to the subject of your image. What I do with my vignettes is drop my transition down to 0 so that I can see my edge. And then I can make my vignette shape. I can make it round. I can position it over here. I can either drag the little dot around on this frame, or I can choose the navigation tool here. And then I can come over and kind of drag this and position it precisely where I want it to be, something like that maybe. And now I can play with the strength of that vignette, and I can increase that a little bit or decrease it. The best vignette to me is the one you can't even see is there. So it has to be very subtle. And then you can, you can size it, maybe a little bigger than that. And then I'll bring my transition up. And now I may be too much strength, so I'll back that off a little bit. And now there's our image. We went from that. Get out of there. We went from that to that. So the image to me has suddenly become something that I would be happy to have rather than one that I was ready to throw away. Okay, so let's grab another image here. Looking at the time, we're pretty good. We still got about a half hour. I'm going to go to another image, and I'm not going to save this. Well, while I'm here, let me show you. I mentioned before that you could save a look. So we've just done all this work on this image. You can go up here and choose Save a Look, and I'll just call this Bird. And you can make a description of whatever you did to it if you want, and say, okay. And now when I go to my looks, whoops, I hit the wrong button. When I go to my looks here, and I choose My Looks, I can search on Bird, and, well, where is it? There's a lot. Did I call that something besides Bird? I don't know what it did. My Looks. Oh, because I don't have it on all, so it couldn't. So there we go. There, I was looking and it wasn't finding it. So there's my bird right there. So now I can apply that look. Oh, and I just double applied the same thing on top of what was already there. But you could apply that look to another image. Definitely need to delete that. I didn't apply it, so it didn't register. But that's a great way of doing things, you know, not batching, but, you know, saving time on processing. Okay, I'm going to grab another image here. Let's see, look at my notes here. This is a car that I took in Cuba, and where are you? I'm going to drop this on the interface. And again, it's a raw file, so it's going to take a second. So here's my image. It's a raw file, so it looks a little flat, and I didn't do a good job of composing and cropping it, so we're going to take care of that in a minute. I usually try and do most of my composition in the camera at the time I shoot, but obviously don't always have that happen. So, excuse me. So again, what I'm going to do is run this through my standard process. I'm going to start with Denoise AI, and I'm going to make this a little smaller here. So there's 50%. We're in the split mode, so we can look at this. I'm going to choose the denoise, and I'm going to ask it to tell me, make some recommendations. I'm going to increase the noise removal just a little bit, just from experience. I know it's not going to be enough to satisfy me. And now I'm going to hit update and let it do its thing here. Denoise runs pretty quickly. Where you can really notice this is on the the license plate number and things like that. I mean, you wouldn't look at this image and say, wow, it's really needs some denoise action. But when you do this, look at the difference, look at the numbers. There's after and there's before. They go from fuzzy to sharp. And if we zoom in on this to 100%, and anytime you change the size of your view, you have to rerun the update. So I'll click that again and rerun it. It runs much quicker in a larger form. But I want you to see this. Look at the logo here on the car. Look at the difference. There's before and there's after. I mean, it's quite amazing what this stuff does. Look at the word Cuba on the license plate. You can barely read it here, and there it's very sharp and prominent. I'm going to go ahead and apply that change and let it round trip me back into Studio 2. And it's almost there. Okay, and then I'm going to run Sharpen AI. And I'm going to maybe drop this down a little bit. And on this one, I am going to mask this. So I'm going to choose masking up here at the top. And down below, it recognizes the car. And I'm going to say, yep, that's for sure a car. And it's added the mask. And then if I needed to, it missed the mirror. I can make the radius a little smaller. I can come in here and get that mirror. And I can come over here and get this mirror in the back. And I don't know how important it is to do that, but you have this ability to do that with this tool. So you can tweak the mask once it's made. So once you have it made, I'm going to apply the mask. And now I can go and run my Sharpen AI. And again, I'm going to follow the automatic suggestion. And that works for me. I'll go ahead and leave that the way it is. And I'm going to update that. And again, this is an image that you would look at normally and think, wow, it doesn't really need anything. It's pretty good. But these little adjustments can make a huge difference in the final image. One of the things that I'm going to turn this into a painting eventually, and I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but I'm often asked by people, why do you go so much trouble to sharpen and denoise an image when you're just going to obscure the sharpness of it with a painterly effect? Well, my answer to that is, I think that the images, even if they've been applied a texture or a painterly effect, look better in the end if they've been processed to look their best before you start adding those textures and filters. That's the way I learned years ago with even 10 years ago when I started doing some iPhone processing. It's to get the image as clean and clear and precise as you can get it, and then begin to add your filters and textures. And I think that really does make a difference. So that's why I spend so much time in the early stages of the edit, even if I know I'm going to do some stylizing later that might make it more, not appear as sharp and precise. We're almost there. Okay, here we go. So there's our before and there's our after. And again, you can see even after the denoise, it's even further clarified. Again, if I go to 100% and run this again quickly, it's just an amazing difference. The combination of these two tools together yields a result like I've never seen with any other software that I've used. Okay, here we go. So look at this. There's before and there's after. I mean, it's really amazing to me how clean this can get. Let's go ahead and apply that and round trip it back into Studio 2. Boy, it seems to be going extra slow here. I apologize. It's not usually that. So I think it has to do with being online and everything as well. I just, I noticed, Victoria, I saw your question here about that you noticed that your plugins weren't appearing, but then you restarted Studio 2, I believe, and they appeared. So that's good to know. So if anybody else is having that issue where there are adjustments, Studio 2 or other applications that you've purchased and they aren't showing up, you should be able to restart your app and they should come up. They made that change a while back, and it's really nice that that new program can find those. One of the things that you'll notice is they do frequently update these AI applications. They're constantly making changes to them. So you'll want to make sure that that you keep up with the latest. Stephen, Stephen Geis is asking how much RAM on my Mac. I'm not sure. I'll have to let you know. I think it's 16, but I'm not sure what I ended up with on that. Boy, this is really going slow. I apologize. We're almost there. Okay. Okay. So now there's our image. There's before where we started, and there's where we are now. I mean, it's night and day. There's before, there's after. So now, again, this is a raw file. So I'm going to start doing some processing. The first thing I'm going to do with this, though, is crop it. And again, I just didn't do a good job of cropping this in the camera. I could use a standard aspect ratio, but I'm going to crop this by custom. I want to crop out that green over here. And I also want to crop this in a little bit and bring this up a little bit. So I'm really cropping out quite a bit of the image, but I don't care so much in this case. And that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And there's the new crop on our image. So now, again, this is a raw file. So I'm going to start with that basic adjustment. I'm going to come in and I'm going to play with this is a tricky lighting because of the bright here and the dark in the front. I'm going to play with that black level a little bit, try and drop my white level because I want to de-emphasize that bright area, a little clarity, and maybe lift the exposure just a tiny bit. So something like that. And this is where you're going to exercise your own creative voice on this. There's before that basic adjustment, and there's after. It's a pretty subtle adjustment, and you might be more aggressive with what you do, but that's where I'm going to start. Then I'm going to go down to precision detail, and I'm going to go to my presets here. And I'm more interested in the shadow detail than in the highlight detail. So I'm going to start with the shadow detail. I love that. I love what it just did. So I'm going to apply that. If I wanted to, I could tweak it a little bit. I'm not going to take time to do that. But here's before that adjustment, and here's after. The other thing that I'm going to do here, or that I could do, I won't do it because I just won't take the time. But this is another place where I might invoke the mask here, mask my car so that these adjustments that I'm doing are occurring only on the car, just like we did with the bird. I don't really want to enhance the detail of this background. I want it there for context, but I want the car to be the figural part of the image. So I'm not going to mask it, but that's a suggestion that I might do in another situation. Same here with, I'm going to go to precision contrast. And once again, I'm going to go down here to the presets. And for this one, I mean, so many of these are very similar. Let's look at what brightness does. Oh, that's way over the top. Oh, that's color detail. I'm sorry. Let's do brightness. That looks like an HDR image almost. Here's little things. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pick one. Let's go with the HDR, which is very over the top, but I'm going to mitigate that by dropping it down. I want a little drama here. I want that car to have some drama. So I'm going to go with that, drop it down. I'm going to apply it. And, you know, there's our image. And again, if I wanted, I could mask the car and drop down that background a little bit. The next thing I'll do is I'm going to go to my HSL color tuning. One of the things that I'm loving about this is I want to emphasize this taxi sign. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose the yellow, and I want to see if it's the yellow here. And I'm going to saturate that yellow, and I'm going to bring it up. Now, clearly, and that may be too much, that's way too much in the background, of course, but I only care about the sign right here. So once again, I'm going to mask. I'm going to come down here and invert the mask. So I'm seeing the image now without any color. I'm going to choose my brush, increase the transparency. I'll zoom in on that and drop my radius way down. And now I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to hit that taxi part and get that nice and bright. And now, if I didn't think it was bright enough, I could go back in here to that yellow and I could increase it even more. And it's only affecting the taxi part because I masked it. So something like that. It may be too much, but that's okay. Then by the same token, I could do another HSL color tuning and I might drop the color down in this background because it's a little bit too bright for me. But something like that. And I might go in here and do another basic adjustment and just try and bring that exposure up just a tiny bit in the front of the car, which that's actually overall, but that's okay. But you see how you can use masking to almost just sculpt the light in your image. I'll leave it at that, and I'll add another quick vignette here. And let's drop that transition down so we can see, make it oval, drag it down around this area of the image, drop that strength down and increase my transition. And there we go, something like that. And so there's our image. Now, we could be done right now, but if I would like to turn this into a painting, well, there are a couple ways to go about that. I could go into my looks here and I could find a look that I want to apply and do that. But what I'm going to do, rather than that, I'm going to add an impression adjustment right here. Impression is the tool that lets you add painterly effects. And you can see right away it's defaulting to this brush and whatever settings I had in the last thing I did. But you can change that easily by just selecting different brushes. Here's another one here. A lot of times I'll play with these until I find one that I really like. Then you can go down in the adjusters here. You can adjust the number of strokes. Like there's fewer strokes, there's more strokes. You can increase the brush size or increase the paint volume. There are all these different things that you can do. One of the things I want to point out, you notice how the little white spots are appearing? What's happening is the canvas is showing through. The paint isn't covering the canvas, and we're seeing the white specks of the canvas behind this image. We could increase our brush size or our paint volume, but that's going to change this look. There's another way to fix that, and that is to scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see a texture option here within impression. I'm going to open texture. I'll slide down again, and here I have different canvases. So I'm going to choose a canvas for my painting. I'll just choose canvas 3, and nothing happened, right? Well, I have to increase the strength of the texture before anything happens. Then I can also, you can see the texture starting to appear. I can increase the size of it, make it really big or small, really prominent and strong. And this is up to you how much of that texture you want. I once had a woman argue with me at an exhibit one time that I had a painting on the wall, and I kept saying, no, it's a photograph. And she insisted, because she could see the canvas, that it was a painting. So it's just a realistic effect. But the other thing is, we still have our white spots, right? Well, down here, you have a background type. We currently have solid selected, and the solid color is white, and that's what's showing through. But if I switch to original, I'm actually now chosen the photograph as the background. So notice how it filled in all of those little white spots. And now you can maintain that brush look that you liked, and tweak to your heart's content to get the effect that you want. There are all these different ones you can play with, but one of them I really like is the smudge, where you just give it a little bit of a smudge, and it kind of softens the brush strokes. You can go way, way up with it and make it over the top like that, but just a tiny bit gives it a softness and a nice feeling about it that I really like. So that's everything there. I want to take the last few minutes here to jump really quickly into masking. Let me see here, the best way to do that. Let me show you, I'm going to show you one thing that's just a really quick and easy thing you can do with masking, that is the replacement of a sky. I'm going to drop this image in here. Now, this one is a JPEG image. I've already processed it a little bit in Studio to get it the way I like, but you notice there's no sky. It's a bald sky. So what I'm going to do is go out to Mask AI and open up the interface. And if you haven't used this for a while, they just updated it last week. So there's things that are changed and different, and they move things into different places. So it's kind of strange. So this is the image. You notice I bring it in, and my image is red. Well, Studio or Mask AI uses what they call a tri-map method for their mapping. And by that, they mean they're using 3 colors. They're using green, blue, and red. Red is the cut color, the part that's going to be removed from the image. Green is the keep color, and blue is the compute line that you draw between what you're going to keep and what you're going to cut. So normally, for many images, you would get your cut brush and you would drag it along and draw this image. But one of the cool things that they have now is something called sky. If you look over here in this little panel right here, there's a subject button and a sky button. And what it does, it recognizes where the sky is, and it creates a mask that will eliminate the sky so that you can add a background, another sky in there, like with clouds. So watch what happens. I'm going to click the sky button here, and it's masked. You can see here's the keep part, here's the cut part up here, and the blue line is the compute line. And here's a little tip. You notice the tree here. It's masked around the tree. Well, there are holes in that tree that should show blue sky behind it, but the way it's masked right now, it won't do that. What you want to do is take this blue brush and paint that in. And now when we run our mask, it's going to recognize that there are holes in that tree where light has to come through. So we'll come down here. I'm going to choose AI and choose Compute Mask. And I'm going to click on that. And it's going to compute our mask for us. It's pretty quick. There we go. So there's our mask. And what I like to do is switch to a single view up here at the top. So I'm seeing only one pane. And then I want to switch to the keep mask right here. So there is our image. Look how clean that mask is. And look at the tree. It got the blue out of the background. You know what? I forgot to do this one up here, and you see the blue showing through, so you can see the difference. I didn't mask in that one. So now what I want to do is add a background. I want to add a sky. So I'm going to go up here to background, and I'm going to choose image, and I'm going to load an image. And I have a folder here. Where'd you go? Here we go. This one right here. The sky, it's a TIFF file. And I I can't swear to this, but I think it's one that I photographed. It's one of my images, but you can find sky, you can buy skies and all that stuff to replace, but you can always create a folder of your own skies. So here's our image. I need to switch to transform over here. And now I can drag this up and position my sky where I want it. And so I want to get it as, I'm going to just drag it in to make it so it just fits, and kind of looking at the way the sky is, and I want to make sure. Now, look at this right here. You see this spot right here? I haven't got my sky low enough, so I'm going to drop it down to get below the horizon. And now that looks pretty good right there. I kind of like where this is playing, and everything's there. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to click on transform. Now here's a little weird bug. When I click on transform, it jumps me back to the tri-map. I don't want that view. I have to come back up here and reset it to keep. Now I have all of these sliders that I can use to adjust this blue background. So I can play with my exposure a little bit. I can make it a little darker. I could lighten the saturation to make it a little more realistic. I can play with all of these different things to get that background the way I want it. The other thing I'm noticing is I want to brighten my foreground. So I can switch up here from background to foreground. And all I'm going to do is simply come in here and lift my exposure values a little bit on that foreground to go with that sky a little better. And that's it. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and apply this. I didn't have to do any tweaking or anything. I'm going to apply it, and I'm going to choose the composite image that round trips me back into Studio 2. So one of the questions I get a lot, if you use this tool with Photoshop, this will come in as a separate layer in Photoshop, and you will be able to have a little more options in how you edit.
All right, we're back. I know that was a lot, but if you want to watch it again, just send me an email and I will send you the link to that video. I've watched it now 3 or 4 times, and I picked something up each time because there are so many things and so many options to use to work on your films, but you can, on your images, but you can see the power of these Topaz modules. So send me an email if you want. Thanks for coming today. Next week, I will have a program that I've developed on special techniques for landscape. And we'll go through all kinds of aspects related to making very good landscapes.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
Quickly, I went to their website and they had many different things like gigabyte is $100. The sharp thing is 80. Denoise is 80. You know, they're all different price points. Which ones do you personally have? I know you have Studio 2.
I have Studio 2 and I have Gigapixel.
Okay.
And I have Denoise. And often they run specials on bundles. So you might look at a bundle purchase also.
Okay, great.
Those are the ones that I use the most. And I use the Gigapixel because they make large prints. And so many people will send me a file. He started with a 6 meg. Most people send me a 1.5 meg and they want a 20 by 24.
Can I ask a question about that? He started with a 6 meg and went 2x and it ends up 36 meg.
Yes, that's strange because at first I thought it means 2 times the original. It's a naming convention they use for the different sizes. So 2x, 4x, 6s, it doesn't mean the multiplication,
okay,
as you saw. And I've learned using that module that if I want to take something up more than 2x, yes, you could click on 4x, but by doing it twice as 2x, I get a better, larger size. So whatever they're doing at the 2x, it adds all the extra pixels in there. Then I'll just run it again if I want it larger than that, and it it's a better quality aspect. Now, I'm sure they'll improve all that, but that's how I do it right now. So my steps are for enlarging something and then getting it ready to print is gigapixel 2x once or twice, and then denoise. And the denoise is so amazing. It takes out artifacts. It's just wonderful. And then I take it into Studio, or I'll take it directly into Photoshop and work on it from there.
Can I ask one more question about the adjust?
Nope, you've had your all for today. Sorry, Sid.
Thanks, John.
Yes, Steve, what do you need?
Well, if you create your own look that includes a mask, is that look in the future constrained to the same mask?
Yes.
Okay.
John, I have sharpen and denoise. What is Studio 2? What does it do?
Studio 2 is the main package he was using. And when he would go to Gigapixel or Sharpen, they were plugins. So Studio 2 is the main piece of software that has the layers. He didn't really emphasize this, but every time he was doing something more to that, to one of those images, it was a layer that was coming in, was being created. The same as in Photoshop. So you have, when he would do precision, that was there as a layer. When he did contrast, that was another layer. When he did basics, another layer. And so we can go back and tweak those layers each time. And of course, to show all the capabilities, it take 3 or 4 hours to run through it. So he was covering a lot in just a little over an hour. But it's layers. And the other part are the enhancements. They call them looks or presets. And those are in addition to the layers. So it's a large piece of software that allows you to work entirely on an image and have other plugins that are Topaz plugins. So his basic work today was done on Studio 2. And then when he would go to one of the other things like denoise or sharpen, they were used as plugins. And we kept saying, now I'll return. He meant he was coming back to Studio 2, which is the main package. And I'll give you an equivalent would be, it's if you were in Photoshop and you were going to use some plugin in Photoshop. Photoshop's your main package. You click on a plugin, bring it in, work on your image, and then get back into Photoshop. He's using, and Topaz Labs is hoping people will use Studio 2 as the main package and have the other modules as plugins.
And so what does Studio 2 do for you that Photoshop doesn't do?
Well, I would say it's the other way around. I think Topaz is trying to compete now with Photoshop. And I noticed there are other packages. There's one called Luminar, which is also coming along in a lot of ways similar. So these software packages are beginning to compete with each other and compete with Photoshop, of course. It's just I've been with Photoshop since the second version came out. So I will stay with Photoshop as my main element, or main processing package. And I will use Studio 2 to bring to my images, a whole different look. So I may have something I've worked on in Photoshop and then go into Studio 2 and use other plugins from Topaz, or I may start in Studio 2 and then save that image and take it into Photoshop. He mentioned that you could have Studio 2 as a plugin to Photoshop. I don't like doing it that way. I like to do it as a standalone and then save my image. I'm very, very precise and rigid on folders and how I keep my images. So I know where they are. I know what I'm going to work on. I know how I can get it from one piece of software to another. I think a lot of the plugin aspect is because many users are not very rigid about their folders. And that is why Lightroom came about. The biggest part of Lightroom initially was the folder manipulation, but folder tracking, so that you could put names on your images and it would find them for you, because not many people are very firm about creating folders. I am. So I work on a lot of my modules separately.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. See you next